Once again to Freedom Fighters for America Radio. This is your host, Independence. We have with us tonight Ms. Jennifer Fitzgerald. She's from Canada, and she has a very, very horrible story to tell us regarding what's going on with her family and her husband and children. This is our Child Protective Services series, although this is a lot more than just problems with Child Protective Services. So I'd like to introduce you all to Ms. Jennifer Fitzgerald. Welcome to the show, Jennifer.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Can you please tell us how this all got started for you? Could you give us a brief rundown of what happened?
What happened is that my husband and I came from British Columbia, the province of British Columbia, to Toronto in December of 2006, and we were complaining about organized crime taking over our home province of British Columbia, and Children's Aid Society of Toronto came in and took our 5-month-old baby. And then on July 11th, 2007, I had another baby, and they came to the hospital when the newborn was 1 day old and apprehended him also. And we haven't seen either child now for 2 years. We tried to get the attention of the authorities, the federal, provincial government, and even police for some concerns that we had and some gang stalking concerns that we had. And my husband wrote some emails to Premier Dalton McGuinty of Ontario, which were interpreted as threatening, and they arrested him. So they ignored our attempts to get help, and they arrested him instead, and he was arrested for 5 counts of uttering threats. And he is presently being incarcerated now at Toronto East Detention, and he's awaiting a bed at a place called CAMH, which is the Center for Addiction and Mental Health. They're accusing him of having delusions. They're telling him that his perceptions about Canada being infested with organized crime are in fact delusional, and that he is mentally ill. And I'm very concerned about them sending him to this institution because they could perhaps forcibly medicate him, or perhaps he could be detained there for a very long time and suffer psychiatric abuse. So this is the situation right now.
Okay. Can I backstep with you just a little bit? Your husband was reporting organized crime and corruption. Can you please tell me
Yes.
what types of crime and corruption he was coming across and what he was reporting?
Actually, my husband was going to write a book titled Silent Infiltration, and he had observed the dynamics of gangs in the lower mainland of British Columbia, specifically biker gangs, and he was able to see that they were invading the province, public, private sectors, and even police and government. And he was noticing that he was in the tugboat industry for a while, and he noticed that there was some things going on in the Canada-U.S. waters. In fact, he overheard a conversation that he shouldn't have about some smuggling. And he also worked for tow truck companies, and he noticed that they had contracts with the city, the gang members do police work and work closely with law enforcement and the RCMP. That's the Royal Canadian Mounted Police.
And what type of smuggling did he come across? I didn't mean to interrupt you. What kind of smuggling did he come across? Was it drugs?
Yes.
Okay, so they were drug dealing, and he was getting wind of it being a tugboat captain. Was he a captain, or he served on one of the tugboats?
He was working on one of the tugboats, and he overheard something that frightened him a lot. That he felt that he should keep to himself, because he thought that if he said anything about this, that they would be angry at him, and he shouldn't have heard this. He felt that he shouldn't have heard this conversation.
Right. So, in other excuse me. So, in other words, he was working, heard things he shouldn't have been hearing about drug smuggling.
Yes.
How did he? What's the relation with your husband to the bikers?
My husband was invited to join the Hells Angels. He doesn't have any relation to the bikers. My husband is not an organized criminal and has never belonged to any gang, but he was invited while he was cooking in a restaurant where they frequented. And he was a cook, and they invited him to join the Hells Angels, offering him $5,000 and telling him that neither his family nor himself would be bothered should he join. But he declined.
Is he a motorcycle rider? Did he ride a bike?
No, he did not. My husband loves boats. My husband is a sailor. He's not a motorcycle person.
Okay. So, in other words, they requested him. And what reasons do you think that they requested him to join their gang if he didn't ride a motorcycle? Because that club is basically a motorcycle club.
I think that they had become aware that he was very knowledgeable about their goings-on, and I think that he knew a little bit more than they would rather he knew, and so then I think that they thought that it would be better if he were actually involved with them, therefore.
I see. So, in other words, if he was under their wing, they could keep an eye on him, they could control him,
exactly,
and be able to blackmail him and have more leverage over him for not reporting the incidents that he's been discovered.
Exactly. I think that they thought that he was somewhat of a loose cannon and could expose some of the things that they would want to keep secret.
Right. So he turned them down. And
yes.
What transpired after that? Now, what's the timing between him turning them down? What happened next?
Well, some of the things that happened were that my husband had a misunderstanding with a woman at the same restaurant, and apparently he was taken aside, and he was told that this woman was a scorpion. In the gang world, if you encounter a scorpion, it means a slow death for you. And this woman seemed to take quite a dislike to him all of a sudden and called him a psychopath. And he was told that he should stay away from her or she and her brothers would sink his boat with him in it. My husband lived in his boat in False Creek near Granville Island in Vancouver. So some of the things that happened after my husband worked at this restaurant were we were mad dogged on a couple occasions where you get stared at by a gang member.
Right. These gang members were the biker gang?
Absolutely.
Okay. They were the Hells
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yes. I would say that it although there are many gangs, I would say that it was that particular group.
How did you know? How did you know it was them?
I think that my husband. No, I think that my husband thought that it was, and I'll take his word for it.
So that was his observation, and he was closer to the